This guy who was after Shlomo.
Right.
We're talking about Yeravam.
Right. So Yeravam wanted to be king. Yeravam wanted to be king, and he couldn't take it. He couldn't take the fact that he was going to play second fiddle to Rechavam, which is Shlomo's son, Rechavam ben Shlomo. Their names are super similar, almost exactly the same, but they're very, very different people. Okay, so this is what happened, or at least one version. Everything in history is one version. So Yeravam went to the. So Yeravam decided he's gonna mount a revolution. He's gonna rebel against Shlomo, or Shlomo's dynasty. He was going to rebel against all of these things. All of these things came together, and he went to the heads of the tribes, and he told them like this. He says, "This is never the way we intended this to be. We wanted a king in order to fight the wars, and great, that happened, wonderful, but it was never to take away the independence and the autonomy of the tribes. It's not the way. It's not what we wanted. It's not what we were supposed. It's not what we intended here." David was great with the wars, and Shlomo was a very wise man. But now we need to regain our independence. We need to go back to our roots. This whole thing with Yerushalayim and this, okay, it was a strategic move. It was a way to unite the people. It was a way to unite Yehuda and Binyamin, who were then warring with each other because Shaul came from Yehuda, from Binyamin, and David was from Yehuda. So in this way, David brought the people together, which is great, and now we have unity. But now we have to get back to our roots. We have to get back to the way things were. The way things were when the Shoftim were here, when Shmuel HaNavi was here, when Yeshua was here, the things that Yeshua told us about living in the land and finding our destiny in the land, and each tribe having its own destiny, its own purpose, its own mission, its own shlichus here in the land. And somehow this whole thing with the kings and everything got so totally blown out of proportion. And now it's only Shlomo's kids, and now there's very high taxes, and now there's a draft, and now there's this parliament, this government, and it's telling us what to do, and it's making laws for us. We didn't ask for any of this. This is not what we intended. So they said, okay, what do you suggest? What do you recommend? So he says, I believe that we should go back to basics. Back to the basics is the holy cities that have always been holy for the Jewish people for 1,500 years, since the time of Avram Avinu. This is the city of Hebron. This is the city of Shiloh, of Beis Kel. Beis Kel is where Yaakov Avinu went and he davened. Shiloh is a place where the Jewish people went and davened. And the Mishkan stood for 369 years, much, 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 much longer than the Beis Hamikdash was even standing, ever. And he says we have to go back to these places, we have to go back to our roots, we have to go back to the way we were before, and we have to reestablish the state in the way that Hashem originally intended, and the way God intended, and the way Yeshua intended, and the way Moshe Rabbeinu intended, and to follow all of the things that it says over there. And this whole thing with kings and capital cities and parliaments and the Beis Hamikdash or whatever, all these newfangled ideas, it's just not working. So after much negotiation with the heads of the tribes, they said that they weren't so sure if they agreed with him. And they didn't know if this was really the right way to go. And they said, you can't argue with success. You can't argue with the fact that David and Shlomo, waged all the wars, and it was very good. And the Jewish people have been living, in peace and serenity and security. And we don't want to lose that peace and security. It's been very peaceful. It's been very nice, very pleasant to live here the past 40, 50 years. And we don't want to go back to the way things were before in that regard. So Yeravam said, you know what, you're right. See, this is the way he navigated this whole conversation in a brilliant way. He said, you're right. So you know what? Let's take what we want and we'll leave what we don't want. So he says, we'll keep a kingdom, but a kingdom that respects the autonomy and the sovereignty of every one of the shvatim, and they won't levy such high taxes to all the Jewish people. Fine. So he brings up taxes. Taxes was something that people didn't really like. The taxes in the time of Shlomo Melech was 20%. 20% of all income that's earned went to the king. And that's aside from the things that you have to give to the Kohen, and aside from the things you have to give to the Levi, and all of the Trumas and Meisers and the Staka and so on that you have to give. The 20% of all income went to the king. And that it was a lot. So I mean, it's even in today's idea, it's a tremendous amount. So the taxes thing spoke to them. So they said, the leaders of the tribe said, before we make this a revolution, before we turn the whole country upside down, let's go to Rechavam. Let's go talk to him. He's a reasonable person. He's a mensch. Let's talk to him. Let's see what his plans are. Maybe Shlomo needed all these taxes in order to build the Beis Hamikdash and establish the kingdom. But now that everything's running really smooth, maybe he doesn't need such high taxes. Maybe he can lower the taxes. So they went to go have it. So they said, okay. So Yeravam said, okay, so let's do that. Let's go. We'll all come together. We'll make a meeting. We'll sit down with Rechavam and we'll talk to him. We'll ask him, do you plan? What's your plans for the kingdom? Are you going to raise taxes? Are you going to lower taxes? What's going to be? If he's going to raise taxes, we go and we break away. If he's going to lower taxes, so then fine, then there's what to talk about. That means that he understands us and that there's an opening for a discussion. It means he's not just looking to fill his pockets. He's not just looking to make bigger government and to make his city and his kingdom stronger, his palace more beautiful. He's a person of the people. He cares about us. He understands our struggles. He understands what we want, etc. Let's see if there's a dialogue. Let's see if he understands, if he's in touch. At this point, he says he's a spoiled rich kid. He grew up in a palace. His grandfather is David. His father was Shlomo. All he knows is he grew up in an ivory tower. He doesn't relate to the people. So let's go see. Let's go talk to him and see if it's true. He says, I don't think that he can relate, but we'll find out. So they went to go have a meeting with him, and what do you think Rechavam said? Rechavam said that they asked him about the taxes, and he said, not only am I not keeping it at 20%, but I'm planning on raising taxes. So that's all they needed. That's all Yeravam needed. As soon as he heard that, he had the fire, he had the people, he got them all riled up. He built everything on this thing. And as soon as Rechavam said that he was going to raise tax, not only keep the taxes, but raise taxes, they all said, this guy's out of touch. He doesn't understand the struggles of the regular working guy, the regular working man. Gets up 4 o'clock in the morning and milks the cow and works his field and so on. He doesn't understand how difficult it is. And he's not a man of the people. He's a prince. They grew up in in a palace, in an ivory tower, and he doesn't get it. He's out of touch with the people. Yeravam said, that's it. You guys are right. This is it. We can't do this anymore. We got to break away. And that's what he did. And he told Rechavam, he says, either you step down, you're out of touch, you don't know what's going on, and either you step down and you step aside and you give me the kingdom because I have the power now. The people are behind me. You're out of touch with what they want. You don't even know what they want. And you give me the kingdom, or there's going to be a revolution on your hand and you're going to lose your throne. In other words, either do it peacefully and do it with me, or get out. Or be thrown out. Whatever. Either move or be removed. So Rechavam says, "What are you talking about? I'm from David HaMelech, and this is what Hashem said. You can't take over the kingdom. It's not right. It's not what Hashem wants, etc." And Yeravam said, "Don't worry. I know what Hashem wants. Who are you to tell me what Hashem wants?" Anyway, so that's it. And they left the meeting and he started a revolution. He went back and he got the 10 tribes, 10 out of the 12 tribes of the Jewish people, or 10 out of the 13 tribes of the Jewish people. He got them all to back him. And they broke away. They seceded from the union. And they established a kingdom in Beis Kel and in Shiloh and they went back to the autonomy that every tribe was their own thing. And Yeravam was their king, and he was a very dynamic king, and successful king. And this is where, and from this point in history, the Jewish people were split between what's called Malchus Yisrael, the kingdom of the Jews, the kingdom of Israel, and then what became known as Malchus Yehuda. Why was it called Malchus Yehuda? Because that's the way Yeravam coined it. It was like a marketing way of doing it, showing that this is the main kingdom. The main kingdom is the kingdom of Yisrael, the Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, the kingdom of the land of Israel. And then you have a minority, one Shevet, Yehuda, who signed an alliance, signed a pact with Shevet Binyamin. They're together. Binyamin and Yehuda, they're together. And that's it. And they want kings only from Yehuda. They're so pompous, they're so stuck up that it's only Yehuda. No one has a chance, no one has access. It's only Yehuda. And that's it. And they want their Yerushalayim, they want their Beis Hamikdash, they want their power, they want their taxes. So fine, so give it to them. And they're the breakaway. We're the mainstream, we're the main country, 10 tribes out of 12. And they are they're Yehuda, they're the tribe of Yehuda, and whoever signs on with them, which at that point was Binyamin, Yehuda and Binyamin. And the movement gained a tremendous amount of momentum. So much so that Rechavam comes to Shevet Dan, and he tells Shevet Dan, he says, listen, I wanna start a war. And I know that you guys have the most experience and the strongest soldiers and the best strategies and so on. So therefore, I want you to be the one to lead the war. So they said, okay, who are we warring against? Who's fighting us? What's going on? Where's the war? So they said the war is going to be against Yehuda, Malchus Yehuda. So they said, whoa. Why would we go and fight our own people? Why would we go and kill our brethren? What's going on? So he said, look, they've broken away. They've created a minority kingdom. They're opposing our they're opposing our kingdom. They're opposing our sovereignty. They're opposing the obvious majority of the Jewish people. The Torah always goes after the majority, and it's the overwhelming majority that believes that Malchus Yisrael is in the right, because it's 10 out of the 12 tribes, and so therefore we have to unify the people. We have to unify the country, and anyone who's breaking away and creating splinters and factions and so on is not going to be good long term for the Jewish people. We have to fight them, and we have to bring them in. We have to reunify the country, just like Yehuda and Binyamin fought for a little bit, and then they came together, and now they have Achdus. So now Malchus Yisrael, has to take over all of the land. So he was talking very altruistically. He was talking about unity and government and so on, and the Jewish people's unity. Whatever. But the reality was he was just hungry for power. It wasn't enough for him, the 10 tribes. He wanted all 12. It wasn't enough for him, just the northern part of Israel, 80% of the land of Israel. He wanted 100% of the land of Israel. And so he went to Dud and he says, we're going to do this. We're going to wage war. And Dud says, I don't know. You said that we have autonomy, and you said that we get to decide what we do and whatever. So we're deciding not to do this. We'll come to the community barbecue, but we're not going to go and wage war against Yehuda. We don't really want to do that. So he said. So Yeravam was not happy with them, and there was bad feelings or relations between them. And according to one opinion, this is when, the reason why I'm telling the story is because I'm telling the story of the 10 tribes. So according to one opinion, or some opinions, this is when the first of the 10 tribes left. This is the beginning of the breakdown of the Jewish people. Dan felt very uncomfortable. They felt pressured. They felt unaccepted. They felt that they had to, that either they listened to Yeravam or they weren't going to have a seat at the table anymore. And so therefore, part of, if not all, of the tribe left Israel. And there's different discussions about exactly where did they go. According to some opinions, they went to Africa. According to some opinions, Africa didn't exist, and it's really named for another place that was somewhere else in the Middle East, somewhere near further out in the Far East. And it's difficult to know exactly, but according to some opinions, this is what happened with Shevet Dan. And this is the source, by the way, just to jump way ahead, is that at a certain point, as we all know, in recent history, there was a group of people from Ethiopia that came to the land of Israel, and they claimed that they were Jews. And so there's a number of theories as to who they might be. In other words, assuming that their story is true, assuming that they are Jews. So there's a number of options of what their story could be. Option number one is that they are descendants of a woman who was the king of Sheba. The queen of, did I say king? I meant queen. The queen of Sheba. The queen of Sheba is modern day Ethiopia, or close by. And there's stories of her that she came to Yerushalayim to visit and to meet with Shlomo Melech. And according to some opinions, she married him. According to other opinions, she went back to her country. Not that that's a contradiction. She could have married him, and also gone back to her country. And according to some opinions, according to the opinion that she either married him or she was extremely enamored by the Jewish religion, she converted to Judaism, and she went back to her country and converted many people to that way of life as well. And so therefore, these are the descendants of those people, either biological descendants of Shlomo and his wife, the Queen of Sheba, or just people that were Magayer, people that converted in that portion of the country. That's one option. The other option is that they're from Shevet Dan, that this is their story. And as far as I recall, the chief Sephardic rabbi of Israel said that he says that it's likely to say that these Ethiopians that are coming now into the land of Israel are from the lost Shevet of Dan. And this is the story of how they got there. Of course, just for the sake of whatever, so we don't know if they actually are, they actually aren't. We don't know. It's all these things are theories. We also don't know, even if the theory is 100% true, 100% correct, we don't know what type of intermarriage happened all throughout the millennia. I mean, we're talking about 2,500 years more. Yeah, 4, 7. No, much more. It's like 3,000 years. Almost 3,000 years. 2,700 years, something like that. So it's a tremendous amount of time. It's half of the history of the world. So we don't know how many people have been intermarried and how many people are truly Jewish and so on. And so therefore, they said that everyone has to do conversion either way. But this is the story. This is how the story goes. And this fits with the sources quite well in a very, very interesting way. Okay, so that's the first beginning of the story of how we hear that the tribe started to splinter and fragment, and how Malchus Yisrael started to fall apart. Now, Yeravam ended up fighting with Yehuda, even without Dan, but he lost the war. It was a civil war, and he lost. And there was more than one also. It went on. He was constantly, he couldn't handle that Yehuda, that Rechavam was sitting on a throne. He wanted that seat. He wanted that throne. He wanted the Beis Hamikdash. He wanted the kingdom of. That's what he wanted. He wanted Yerushalayim, and he wanted all that, but he couldn't. So he did it a different way. But it always bothered him, and he tried to conquer, but it never worked. In order to further establish his kingdom, he wanted that there should be no dependency whatsoever on Malchus Yehuda. He didn't want anyone even going there. He wanted everyone should stay in Malchus Yisrael, and so therefore he forbade people from entering into what was called Machas Yehuda, which is basically going to Shalayim or Hebron or any of these other places, and going to the Beis Hamikdash. He stopped them. He made it illegal to leave. He made it illegal to go to the Beis Hamikdash. And it says that later on they put four golden statues of golden calves, which is so weird that that's something so iconic would work. But he set up two golden calves at the crossroads all the way at the north of the country, and then two golden calves at the crossroads with the highway that goes down into Yerushalayim, which still exists today, to stop people to show them the border and to stop people from going to the Beis Hamikdash. It was absolutely usher. It was absolutely forbidden to go there. So what happened? The Jewish people don't have Aliyah L'Regel. They're not going to the Beis Hamikdash. They're not whatever. So they made like a mishkan or whatever, a mizbeach or something in Beis Kel. Okay, there's some sort of temple that Yeravim built, but it didn't last. It didn't last long term, and eventually, what happened? The Jewish people started going back to doing whatever it is that they wanted to do, which was to build their own mizbeches and then make their own sacrifices and whatever. And that went from one thing to the next, and it went back to idolatry. So that was it. It took a very, very short amount of time, and very, very quickly, the entire Jewish people, all the 10 tribes, started to sin again in the way that they did before, in the time of the Shoftim. In other words, exactly the way it was before, that every Shevet had their own autonomy and everyone did their own thing, and there was no real leadership and so on. So the same thing happened now, where the Jewish people went back to idolatry and so on. And what happened in the times of the Shoftim when there was idolatry? So they turned their back on Hashem, and so Hashem didn't protect them, and the nations of the world started to come in and to fight and to war with Malchus Yisrael. Okay, so at that time, so fine. So the wars begin, just like it was during the Shoftim. The wars begin. Different kings come and they try to conquer different cities of the Jewish people, the territory that David conquered. And slowly, they started taking over. They started testing the waters. They had a little war here, a little war there, and they tried to see if they can win against the Jewish people. Fine. So after about 130 years later, so there was a guy by the name of Tiglas Palnasser, otherwise known or more famously known as Sancheirav. And Sancheirav was a guy. He was the king of Ashur, and he decided that he's going to conquer the Jewish people. And I think I mentioned before, Sancheirav was the first Marxist. He believed in human equality. He believed that the reason why there's so much warring, there's so much strife amongst people, is because of an evil thing called tribalism. That every group of people that live in every single country are descendants of someone who lived way back, a million years ago, after the flood. And like we see in the Chumash, if you look in Parshas Nayach, you see that Nayach had 3 sons, and then and it talks about their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and you see their names. And some of those people's names are names of countries that we still have till today, like Yavan and Mitzrayim and Cush and so on, which is Greece, Egypt, and Ethiopia. So these were people that moved to those areas, and it became the land of Mitzrayim. Meaning, land of Mitzrayim, it wasn't just the name of a country, or the land of Yavan. It wasn't the name of a country. It was the name of a person. That person went there. They built a family. They built a dynasty, just like the Jewish people, like I explained before, came into the land of Israel, and they lived there. That their whole tribe lived there from the beginning of time. And these people were there even from before, from the time of Noach. They were living there, and that's it. And they protected each other, and they protected their land. It's their land. And they're all cousins. They're all descendants of this guy by the name of Yavan or Mitzrayim or whatever. And that went on for a very, very long time. And anytime anyone tried to steal someone else's land or people or wealth or whatever, so then there was these tribal wars. And this still exists today in Iraq and Iran with the Shiites and the and the Sunnis and so on. These are all tribes that go back who knows how long. And this is the way the whole world was. Everything was very tribal. Every tribe had their own existence and their own customs and their own way of life and their own culture and even their own language. And so Sancheiriv believed that if he would break down this tribal structure, so then all people of the world could unite under one government. Right? He was the first globalist, and that everyone could unite under one government, and that people wouldn't fight anymore, and that everyone, the strength of all of the warring, the strength of all of the division between people is tribalism. Once you get rid of tribalism, so then the world can be easily conquered, because it doesn't make a difference if you're under this kingdom, that empire, the first empire, the other empire. What's the difference? It's these people, those people. We're all people. We're all human beings. Okay, so obviously he had a personal gain. He had his own design, his own agenda, but the way he presented it, of course, it was altruistic. He was looking for world peace. Fine. So what he would do is he would go into a country, he'd come in with his army. His army was a very powerful army, and he would come and he would conquer a land with a tribe, and he would take those people and he would arrest them, he would chain them, he would put them in convoys, and he would bring them to different countries of the world, and he would drop a number of people from every tribe in every country, in every city as he went through. And then when he came to that country, he took those people and he brought them to other places in the world. And this is how he did. He said he mixed up the whole world. This was specific. He did this purposely in order to break down tribalism, that there should be a bunch of people in every single city, in every single country, a bunch of people from all the different tribes of the world, and they should all be scattered, and it should be done in a way that the people forget where they come from, and that they should just learn to build a country and a life with the people around them, but that's it, and to forget about their tribes. And it worked. It absolutely worked. He conquered a very, very large amount of the world. And today, the people that live in Egypt and the people that live in Greece and the people that live in all these different countries are not the original people that lived there at the time. They're not the original descendants of the original descendants of that person that was named that the country was named after. So even though you still have the country and the name and so on, it's stuck till today, but it's just the name. And the people that live there aren't the descendants of those people. Maybe some of them, maybe a lot of them, nobody has any idea. The whole thing was broken down. And today, we don't know anything more. We don't know, even the Jewish people, we don't know who the tribes are anymore. We don't know which Shevet we're from. Some people do, some people don't. The Kahanim know, some people from Shevet Yehuda know, and so on and so forth. But by and large, we don't know who's from what Shevet and what. Okay. Okay, so here's the story of the 10 tribes. Like started talking about last time, that there's different opinions, there's different stories. There's one story that follows the historical thing, which is what happened with Sancheiriv, that Sancheiriv came and he took all of the 10 tribes, and this is documented in Navi. That Tiglath-Pileser came, and in 3 different waves, he conquered different areas. First, he conquered the most northern part of Israel, where Shevet Naphtali and Dan and Asher lived. And then afterwards, he came further south. He progressed southward in the land of Israel, and he exiled the area that was the Shomron, which is the central and the Galil of Israel. And then he came a third time to take the third group of people, and each time he would take another section, another area of Israel. Sorry, the other way around. Sorry, I mixed that up. The first time was he exiled Reuven, Gad, and the half of Manasseh that was on the other side of the Jordan. Then he came and he exiled Naphtali, Asher, and Dan, which was in the most northern parts of Israel. And then afterwards he came and he exiled Ephraim and Manasseh and whoever else was straggling over there and somewhere in the middle. These were the 3 exiles, and it speaks about this. It's documented in the Navi when the wars were, when he came, who he took, and where. Not only that, but it says where he took them. So when we talk about the 10 lost tribes, we see this mysterious thing that they went to the land of Israel and they went on a hiking trip, and then suddenly 10 tribes got lost with no idea where they went. That's not what happened. It was a very, very specific thing What happened? It's documented in the Navi. Sancherib came and he exiled them. And not only did he exile them, it says in the Navi where he took them. So they're not lost. So the 10 lost tribes are not lost. It says exactly where they took them. It says in the Navi which cities. Okay, so the cities today, we don't know exactly where these cities are. But in general, we have one or two different options, and we know in general what the regions are of where they were taken, which is more or less modern day Africa, Ethiopia, whatever that area. The Far East, not the Far East, the Middle East. We're talking about on the other side of the Euphrates River, which is in between Iraq and Iran, and then further in between Iran and Afghanistan. These areas, more or less, the different cities, the big cities that were in those areas. This is where he took the Jews. This is where he took the 10 tribes. So if that's the case, so then why are they lost? And why didn't they come back? Why didn't we go get them? Okay, that's one story that we need to follow up with. Story number two is that we hear this story that happened with the Kleyaker, and I mentioned it last time, so just to touch on it briefly, is that it says that there were Jewish people that lived in a certain time in a certain place in Europe in modern times, and they were going through many hardships. And someone suggested that we should go and find a holy man, a miracle worker, from the people that lived from the 10 lost tribes. And we should go and we should find the 10 lost tribes, and we should bring back someone that can help us, a tzaddik that can come and help us. Where are the 10 lost tribes? So the legend is that they live on the other side of a river called the Sambatian River. Why is this river called the Sambatian River? Sambatian River comes from the word Shabbat, the Shabbatian River. The Shabbatian River is a river that is called the Sambatian River because it rests on Shabbos. What happens during the rest of the week? It says that there's a lot of earth and sand and rocks that are thrown in this river. It's a very fast moving river with intense rapids, and the stones and the earth get pulled in constantly, and they're being thrown back and forth in the rapids, in the current, and it's impossible to cross. And this river is round, and it surrounds an entire area. And the legend is that the Jewish people the 10 lost tribes live in this utopian place, like this Garden of Eden place that exists somewhere here in this world. And we don't know where it is. It's this hidden place. But there were people that knew how to get there, or at that time they knew how to get there. It was revealed to them how to get there. And they went there, and they came to the Sambatian River, and they couldn't cross. But on Shabbos, the river rests. The river stops being so tumultuous. And because the Jewish people were in such a tremendous situation, such a tremendous problem, where they were in the city in Europe, so therefore it's like a pikuach nefesh thing. It's a life and death thing, and on life and death, you can break the Shabbos for a life and death situation. So therefore, on Shabbos, when the river rested, they swam across, or they took a boat across, or whatever. Once they were there, they couldn't come back because it was life and death to go. But after that, it wasn't life and death to come back. But the guy, so they found there a holy man, and over there, they told him the story. They were very saddened to hear about the plight of the Jewish people, and this great tzaddik said that he's going to go, he's going to fight the problems that they're having over there. And he went, and it's a whole story, and you can read about it and whatever. And he went there, and he helped the Jewish people in that city. And whoever came to go pick him up stayed there on the other side of the Sambatian River forever. Okay. So this is a very weird. So this is the other line of thinking. One line is what's documented in the Navi, that they were taken to certain places, and then another line of the story is that they were taken to this other side of the Sambatian River. Now, this whole thing with the Sambatian River is not documented anywhere. It's just stories. Now, the stories are true. This is what happened in Europe hundreds of years later, or thousands of years later, over 1,000 years later. Is a true story. It's a real story. It was documented. However, it's strange. The reason why it's strange is because what we understand is that the Jewish people broke away from Yehuda. They made a mistake, and then they started serving idols again, and then they stopped going to the Beis Hamikdash, and they stopped serving Hashem. So these are people who were not doing the right thing. These are people that turned away from Judaism. But here you're telling me that Hashem took them, and he brought them to this place on the other side of the Sambatian River. And over there, they're all tzaddikim, they're holy people, miracle workers, and so on. It doesn't really fit with the story. Something must have happened in between. If the story is true, so then something must have happened in between, in which these people did tshuva, and they all suddenly became tzaddikim, which is, again, it's a very far-fetched narrative. It's hard to believe that that's what happened, because because we, as the Jewish people, we didn't serve idols. We stayed, and then we came back, and we had the second Beis Hamikdash, right? All this stuff happened during the first Beis Hamikdash. 130 years after the first Beis Hamikdash was built, they were already exiled. They didn't even last the 410 years that the first Beis Hamikdash stood. And we stuck with the program, and we had a second Beis Hamikdash and so on. And we're not all tzaddikim. We're not this, why didn't we get whatever, any of that? So it's a strange thing to imagine that suddenly 10 tribes in Israel all did tshuva, and now they're very holy people, and they're living somewhere in the Garden of Eden, somewhere on this world. And of course, it doesn't fit with what it says with Navi, that they were taken to these other places and scattered all over the other parts of the world. We look further into the sources and we find something even more difficult to understand in order to put these two narratives together. We look into the story of Yirmiyahu Hanavi. It says in the time of the end of the first Beis Hamikdash, which was only about 200 years later, it says Yirmiyahu went, Yirmiyahu went to go find the 10 lost tribes. And this is also, it's in the Navi. It says he went to the cities that it says in the Navi that Sancherib took them. And he went to go find them, and he went to go speak to them. And some of them didn't want to come back. They said, we're happy here, leave us alone. There were others that were happy to come back, and they didn't. They came back with Yirmiyahu. So that's the first documented place where we find that some of the lost tribes came back to the Jewish people. Possibly even representatives of all the tribes. Okay. That's one piece of information. Another piece of information, we look into the Gemara in Sanhedrin, and we find this very interesting story about Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, who lived 500 years after Yirmiyahu, almost 600 years after Yirmiyahu, after the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash. So Rabbi Akiva also went to go find the 10 lost tribes. And it says that he found them, or he found some of them, in one of the cities where it says that they were brought. And he spoke to them, and he told them that you should come back to the land of Israel. You should come back to the people. And they spoke in a very, very derogatory way about Israel, about the country, about the land. And they said that it wasn't good for us then, and it's not good for us now, and it's a bad place, and it's a ruined place, and it's not for us. And so it says in the Gemara that Rabbi Akiva came back from this trip, and he told the people that these people have rebelled against Hashem. It's nothing to do with Sancherib. It's true Sancherib took them, and it's true that he exiled them, but they're choosing to stay. They've rejected Hashem, and they've rejected the Torah, and they've rejected the land of Israel and the Jewish people, and they've turned their back on their country. They've turned their back on their. And it's from the way it sounds, the way he speaks, it sounds like he had a very, very bad experience with them. But the way that they spoke about everything that he talked to them about, it seemed obvious that he had a very that the people that he met were very had completely rebelled against everything. So much so that in the Gemara later on, and one place I think is in Erchid, and another place is in Sanhedrin, there's a discussion about if the 10 lost tribes have a chelik le'olam haba. In other words, will the 10 lost tribes be returned to the Jewish people when Mashiach comes? And will they be given an opportunity to do tshuva? And will they be re-included and reabsorbed into the Jewish people when Mashiach comes? And will we have a reunification of all the 12 tribes? And guess what Rabbi Akiva said? Rabbi Akiva said, no, there's no way that these people are coming back to the Jewish people. So that, and then there were others that disagreed, and they said no, that they will have. And then there's the third opinion that says, well, it depends. If they'll do tshuva, so then they'll come back. If they won't do tshuva, they won't come back, which means that it's like an individual thing. In the Mefarshim, in the commentaries on this story in the Gemara with this argument with Rabbi Akiva, so some of the opinions say that none of them are arguing. It's not three opinions. Rabbi Akiva was talking about the people that he met over there. He said that those people from that generation, that tribe, those specific people that he met that were living at that specific time, that spoke very badly about Israel and about the Jewish people and about God and about Torah, those people don't have a chelik le'olam haba. In other words, those specific people will not come back in Tchias HaMesim, and they will not be re-included in the country. That's number one. Number two, the second opinion that says that if they do tshuva, they'll come back, and if they don't, then they won't. So then it's the same thing Rabbi Kiva was saying. The Rabbi Kiva was talking about those specific people, and the other opinion is talking about all of the 10 tribes. That it depends wherever they are, whichever each individual. If they've done tshuva, then they'll return. If not, they won't. But either way, everyone agrees that there'll be representation of the Jewish people. Not only that, but it says that like I said, Yirmiyahu HaMelech brought back some people, and then at other times, during the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, and after the second Beis HaMikdash, after Rabbi Akiva went to go speak to some of these tribes, there is documentation of some of the tribes, or representation of some of the tribes returning to Israel, both in the time of the, but both before the end of the first Beis HaMikdash, and then also after the building of the second, and then even after the destruction of the second. And this makes sense. It makes sense because in the Navi we find that Yecheskel talks about what's going to be in the land of Israel after Mashiach comes, and he talks about the 12 tribes. Not only that, but he even says exactly where the new Chalukah, the new borders, the new areas of where each tribe will live, which is different than the way Yeshua split it up. Yeshua split it up one way, and that's the way it was for the times of the first Beis HaMikdash. And then after Mashiach comes and the Jewish people return to the land of Israel, then the Jewish people again will inherit the land, but they'll inherit the land in different places. In other words, the way it was before won't be the way after Mashiach comes. One thing that's very, very different is that Levi didn't receive an area in Israel, and after Mashiach comes, Levi will have a plot of land. And anyway, aside from that, all the other Shvatim are all mixed up in different places. They're not in the same places they were thousands of years ago the first time. So therefore, we see this in the Navi, which means that it has to be that the 12 tribes will all return. The question is, have they already returned? And all of these exiles, these exiled Jews that returned in the time of Yirmiyahu, and the time of Rabbi Akiva, and so on, and in between, are those the representation? That's according to some opinions that the 10 tribes have already returned to the Jewish people, and they've just been so absorbed into the Yehuda and Binyamin because they were such a minority that they lost their identity as a tribe, and we just became one people, and that's it. And that's what happened. And right now we have amongst the Jewish people that live with us now in modern times representation of all 12 tribes. And then other people say that no, that there's still people that will need to be brought back, like it says, Vanidachim Beretz Ashur, and so on. There's still people of the 10 tribes that are still somewhere lost, and they'll be brought back at a later date. And this is the discussion of the Gemara and the commentaries and so on. Now, this whole line of thinking follows very, very nicely with the whole Sancheiriv story, that the Jewish people were exiled, brought into all these different places. Yirmiyahu found them, Rabbi Akiva found them, some of them returned, some of them didn't. All these stories, all these narratives. It also talks about other people later on in all types of different points in history, in the 1300s, the 1500s, talking about a common era. Even in the 1600s, there were people that went out on crusades, I don't know if crusades is the right word. They went out on a mission to go find the 10 lost tribes. And so all of this follows a certain historical line and the documentation that you find in the Navi very, very nicely. What doesn't fit is this story with the Sambatyin and the story with the Klei Yakar. It doesn't fit with the narrative. It doesn't fit with the people that were officially we're not holy and righteous people. That doesn't fit with the story with Rabbi Akiva and who he found there and how they spoke about him, and so much so that they were so upset, that he was so upset by his interaction with them that he came back and he said these people will never merit to do tshuva, and they'll never merit to come back to become part of the Jewish people again. That doesn't really, and that was 500 years later. So what happened that all of a sudden 1,000 years after that, or 500 years after that, all of a sudden they became tzaddikim, so much so that it became so legendary that they're tzidkos, that it says that they came back, they became tzaddikim, and now they can perform miracles and so on. That doesn't make sense. At least not with the narrative, not with the historical narrative. You guys are with me? Any questions?
This is so interesting, but I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Wait, so interesting. Thank you.
The river, though, is that story like not true because it's like sketchy, or it doesn't follow?
It's very sketchy. It's very sketchy, but I'm going to tell you now. I have I'm over time, but I'll take the last 2 minutes to answer this question. a theory that works and makes all of these things work. That makes all these things able to be true. Let me just see what the question was sent over here in the chat. Yes, officially we are all from only the tribe of Yehuda and Binyamin, and if you're a Kohen or a Levi, then you're from the tribe of course from Levi. However, there's a possibility, according to this narrative, that that there is still today Jews from the other Shvatim. For sure, some of the Shvatim came back. We don't know who, we don't know how many, we don't know if they still exist today. And we don't know if there are still multitudes of Jews that are living in different places. Like I said, there's a story about what happened with the Ethiopians. There's also a story that just happened more recently with what's called the Manasseh tribe from the Far East that came to Israel. And there are people that have held themselves as being the descendants of the Manasseh tribe that live somewhere in the Far East, somewhere in China or something like that. And they came back. There's also a legend about the Khuzars. If they're part of the lost tribes, we don't know. But like I said, according to some opinions, the 10 tribes have already come back in minority, but they've come back and they've been absorbed into the larger tribes, which is Yehuda and Binyamin. According to some opinions, that's true, and that there's also still people that are somewhere in the far-flung corners of the world, and Mashiach will bring them back. And according to some opinions, there's a tribe of Jews that live on the other side of the Sambatyon River, who are tzaddikim and people, miracle workers. And there's many Klayakar. There's just a documented story, but there's other stories of people that travel to these areas and that met these people, and it speaks about their kings and their multitudes and their powers, and the stories are endless. There's a lot of stories that are not true. A lot of them are so fantastic. They're so amazing that they can't all be true. But like I said, it doesn't fit with the historical narrative. And so therefore, I'm going to present to you now one theory about what happened. And it's possible that if that's the right version of the story, that this answers all questions. So it says like this. It says that when the Jewish people were given the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu, after the after Shavuos that we just finished, we just came from. So it says Moshe Rabbeinu ascended the mountain, and for 40 days and 40 nights he was on the mountain and he studied the Torah with Hashem. And then Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai with the Luchos, and he came to teach the Jewish people the Torah that he had learned for 40 days and 40 nights. In the meantime, what happened? The Jewish people miscalculated the amount of days that he was gone, and they built a golden calf. And God was very, very angry, and he wanted to destroy the Jewish people. And he told to Moshe Rabbeinu, he says, get out of my way. He says, I want to destroy them, and I'm going to save you, and I'm going to make you a great nation. I'm going to make you the new patriarch of the Jewish people. All of the Jewish people are going to be descendants of you, and all these other people, they're not worth it. They're not worth you. They don't deserve you. They don't deserve me. They don't deserve the Torah. They're all bad people. We're going to destroy them, and we're going to make a new nation, because I promised Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov that your children will be a big nation. So you're a child of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and then I'm going to keep my promise to them. But all these other people, they're just not worth it, and we'll make a new nation out of you. What did Moshe Rabbeinu say? Moshe Rabbeinu said, he says, if you do that, he says, Macheni no misifrecha. He says, if you do that, wipe me out of your book. I'm not interested. I'm going with these people till the end. Either it's me and them, or it's no one. It's not me and not them. I'm not interested. If you destroy them, then I'm not interested. I'm walking away. I don't want to have anything to do with this story moving forward. And you can wipe my name out from the previous story also. I quit. And so it says that when a tzaddik says something, even though it didn't happen, and even though it was only on condition, if Hashem destroys the Jewish people, then macheni no mitzifrecha, then wipe me out of your book. And that didn't happen, still, because the tzaddik said it. So therefore, we see in Parshas Tetzaveh, the only parsha in the entire Torah from the beginning of when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, in Parshas Shmais, he is mentioned in every single parsha all the way till the end of the Torah, and every single book in the book of Shmais, Vayikra, Bamidbar, and Devarim, except for Tetzaveh. Why? In order to be Makaya, in order to keep the words of the tzaddik true, that he should be wiped out of the book at least a little bit in order that because he said it. Now, when you think about it for a second, you say, wait a second. Any thinking person that thinks about the story a little deeply, it says, wait a second. If the tzaddik said, take me out of your book, if the tzaddik said, take me out of your book, and it had to come out in a certain way, that had to happen in a certain way, it's one variation or another. So then what happened with what Hashem said? Hashem said that I'm going to make you as a great nation. I'm going to destroy the Jewish people and make you as a great nation. Where did that happen in a small way? So this is what happened.
So basically, there are these tzaddikim living in this utopia.
So this is what happened. It says that after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, it said that the Levium were exiled into Babylonia. And it says that the king, Nebuchadnezzar, brought them into Babylonia. And it says there's a parak in Tehillim. We say it before benching every single day. Al Nares Bavel Shavim Yashav Nugam Bachinu. On the riverbanks of Babylon, we sat and we cried. Zochreinu was Tzion, remembering the Beis Hamikdash. And it says over there that the king came to them and said that the Levium and the Kohanim that would sing and that would play musical instruments in the Beis Hamikdash, he told them that now that you're here, now you're my subjects, now you'll play for me. You'll play for me and for my honor, you'll play for the Avodah Zarah, you'll play for my reasons. And they said when they heard this, they realized that either they're going to have to play for idols, or they're going to be killed. And it says that they started killing each other until the point where, so instead they shouldn't torture them.
I literally learned this story on Masada.
Similar. And it says that there were tilei tilim. It says there were mountains upon mountains of people that slaughtered each other in order to save each other and themselves from the possibility that they were going to be tortured and forced into serving idolatry. And that's what they said. He says, how can we sing the songs of God on a foreign country, on a country that's impure? So it says the leftover Levium that were still there, who hadn't had a chance to kill themselves before they came to take them away, to force them to sing. So it says when they came, so then they weren't able to kill themselves anymore. It says that they chopped off their thumbs. They took knives and they chopped off their thumbs. It's a horrible story. It's part of the story of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. We talk about the Inquisition, we talk about the Crusaders, we talk about the Holocaust, we talk about all these things, about these horrible things in history. We have no idea how much worse Galus Mitzrayim and the destruction of the first and second Beis Hamikdash was to the Jewish people. The tens of millions of people that died in all of these stories is just horrific. Anyway, it says that they cut off their thumbs, that once they cut off their thumbs, they couldn't play their harps. They couldn't play their musical instruments without their thumbs. And so when they came and they saw all these people that had killed themselves, and all these people with the bleeding thumbs, they left them alone. They said, these people are nuts. That night they slept there on the riverbanks, and in the middle of the night, a cloud descended upon the Levium. These Levium were children of Moshe Rabbeinu. These are the people that God spoke about when he said that I'm going to make you into a great nation. He brought a cloud over them, and inside the cloud he lit a fire, like a pillar of fire, like that went with the Jewish people in the desert. And from this great light, the Jewish people woke up, and the fire beckoned them to come and to follow them. And they walked in the cloud. The cloud carried them, so to speak, and all of their belongings and all their families. And they carried them until it was the day. And then in the day, the clouds lifted and the fire went away. And then it says that Hashem greeted them, and he led them continuously to a certain place, and he helped them to cross this river called the Sambatyon River. And so, if this story is true, if this is the true story, the tzaddikim, these great holy people that live there, are children of Moshe Rabbeinu. And they live on the other side of the Sambatyon River, and they are waiting for Mashiach to come to rejoin the Jewish people. And they're completely righteous people, and they're tzaddikim, and they live there in the way that the Torah originally intended, together with Hashem. over there in this utopian sort of Gan Eden style place, and they're completely saved or protect the land of Sambatyon. And then Hashem closed the river around them. Hashem extended the river to make it a circle, and so that the people that lived in that area will be always protected by the raging river called the Sambatyon. So these are the narratives. I've only touched on a very, very small part of the history. There are books and books written on this stuff, and it's endless. The legends, the stories, the fantastic things that people say that they happened when they found them, when they saw them. The stories are absolutely endless. And I can tell you, as much as you maybe have been entertained by this class, I've been more entertained doing research on this class because the stories are just out of this world. I gotta tell you. Endless.
Thank you.
It's exciting, it's interesting. It's also very confusing because they all come from sources that are, some are true, some are not, some are accepted, some are not, and they're all fantastic stories. They're fun to read, but this version that I'm giving over to you is one that possibly makes sense. That that option number one, that the 12 tribes have already returned to the Jewish people. Option number two is that it, or not again, this is, all of these things fit together. They're not either or. That some Jews have already returned, either some or all of the 10 tribes, that there are still Jewish people in the 10 tribes that are still scattered across the world, and that Mashiach will bring them in. And even if that's not true, and all the Jews that have come have been included in the Jewish people, the exiles that it talks about in the Navi that will be returning is that at the very least the children of Moshe that are found somewhere on the other side of this river called the Sambatyon. That's the story that we got up until now. Any questions?
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. It's really interesting.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.